Your Honor, I'd like to cite the precedent established in Morrison v. Rhode Island Superior Court, 2008. Attorney Rebecca Walsh's voice rang out, confident, polished. Perfectly practiced, Judge Frank Caprio gave a small nod, jotting a quick note, then his pen froze. Right in mid-dash stroke. His eyes narrowed just a fraction. Morrison v. Rhode Island Superior Court, 2008. Something about that citation felt off. Really off. 40 years on the bench had turned his memory for case law into something encyclopedic. He tapped a few keys, pulled up the legal database, searched. Nothing. The case simply didn't exist. And right then, Judge Caprio understood. He was watching a performance, an absolutely brilliant one, by someone who was extremely good at pretending to be exactly what they weren't, the perfect attorney, Rebecca. Walsh had been practicing law in Providence for 15 years, not at some fancy downtown firm. No, she ran a tiny practice out of a modest office on Federal Hill. She took the clients, the big firms. Wouldn't touch, immigration cases for minimum wage, tenant fights for families staring down eviction, small civil matters for people who could never afford those marble lobby lawyers charging $500 an hour. Her clients adored her. She won cases. She knew the law inside out, showed up prepared, argued like a pro, and treated everyone, judges, clerks, even opposing counsel, with total respect and professionalism. By every single appearance, she was exactly what a great lawyer should be. Tuesday morning she strode into Providence Municipal Court representing Elena Martinez, a housekeeper getting sued by her old employer for supposedly wrecking property on a cleaning job. Small claim. Just $3,500, but for Elena, $3,000 might as well have been $3 million. Rebecca had prepped the case like a beast, the evidence against Elena was paper thin. The employer swore she'd scratched an antique table. Yet the photos clearly showed normal wear, nothing sudden, nothing fresh. Rebecca had a rock-solid defense ready, complete with remote testimony from a furniture restoration expert. Judge Caprio flipped through the file while Rebecca delivered her opening. She was sharp, organized, passionate, absolutely on fire for her client's innocence. Caprio had seen her in his courtroom maybe half a dozen times over the years, always fighting for folks who obviously couldn't pay for real lawyers. Ms. Walsh, Caprio said once she finished, you mentioned expert testimony by video conference. Can you cite the procedural grounds for that request? Of course, Your Honor. Under Rhode Island Rules of Civil Procedure, Section 43B, remote testimony is allowed when the expert's physical presence would cause undue hardship and when both parties get proper notice. Caprio nodded. That sounded about right. He made a note to double-check the section number later. Wait. Section 43B was discovery disputes, remote testimony? That's 43A. Tiny mistake, easy mix-up. But weird for someone practicing 15 years. Miss Walsh, I believe you mean Section 43A, correct? Rebecca didn't even flinch. You're absolutely right, Your Honor. My apologies, 43A, I misspoke. The hearing rolled on. Rebecca crushed it. The furniture expert testified the scratches were ancient, not fresh. Elena swore on 20 years of housekeeping she'd never damaged a thing. The plaintiff had 0 witnesses who actually saw any damage happen. Judge Caprio ruled for Elena. Case dismissed with prejudice. As Rebecca snapped her briefcase shut, Elena was crying happy tears. You're free to go, Elena. You don't owe a dime. But just as Rebecca headed for the exit, Judge Caprio's voice cut through the room. Miss Walsh? Could I see you in chambers for a moment? Rebecca Walsh had no clue that her 15-year act was about to come crashing down, and that Judge Caprio had just spotted the very first crack in the perfect identity she'd built. In chambers, Judge Caprio motioned for her to sit. She did, still cool, still composed. But something in the judge's face made her heart race. Double quotes, Ms. Walsh, how long have you been practicing law? 15 years, Your Honor, since 2009. And where did you go to law school? Rebecca had answered this 100 times. The story was memorized cold. Suffolk University Law School. Your Honor, class of 2008. Caprio nodded slowly. And you passed the Rhode Island bar when? July 2009, Your Honor. I see. Caprio turned to his screen. Miss Walsh, During your opening, you cited Morrison v. Rhode Island Superior Court, 2008. Can you tell me a little more about that case? Her brain scrambled. Had she slipped? It was a civil procedure case, Your Honor, dealing with evidentiary standards and property damage claims. Interesting, because I can't find any record of it. Not in Rhode Island, not federal, not anywhere. The room shrank. Rebecca's perfect mask flickered. Your Honor, I may have mixed up the name. It might have been another case. And then there's the Section 43B instead of 43A thing. Small error for someone 15 years in. Caprio's tone stayed gentle, but his eyes were steel. Miss Walsh, I'm going to ask you once, and I want you to think very carefully. Are you a licensed attorney in the state of Rhode Island? Silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Rebecca's fingers dug into the armrests. Lie deeper. Confess, bolt, and disappear forever? No, Your Honor, she whispered at last. I'm not. Judge Caprio leaned back, face unreadable. How long have you been practicing law without a license? 15 years? And in those 15 years, roughly how many clients did you represent? I don't know exactly. Maybe 200. Caprio's jaw tightened. 200 people trusted you with their lives, paid you money, counted on your expertise, and you were never qualified. Your Honor, I know how this sounds. Do you, Miss Walsh? Because this isn't just fraud. This is unauthorized practice of law. This is potentially hundreds of cases that could be thrown out. Clients who could sue you for malpractice, except you were never insured because you were never licensed. I never hurt anyone. Rebecca's voice cracked. I won cases, Your Honor. I helped people who had nowhere else to go. I studied harder than any law student because I had to. I learned every rule, every precedent, every procedure because I couldn't afford a single mistake. Then why didn't you just go to law school? Caprio demanded. Rebecca drew a trembling breath. And the answer she gave was about to force Judge Caprio to confront a truth about the American legal system he'd never truly faced. A truth that would make him question everything he thought he knew about justice, because I couldn't afford it. Your Honor, and because the system wouldn't let me? What do you mean the system wouldn't let you? I grew up in foster care. Aged out at 18 with no family, no money, no safety net. I was smart, got a scholarship to community college, then to URI for my bachelor's, graduated top of my class. I wanted to be a lawyer more than anything on this earth. Her voice grew fierce, alive with old fire. But law school starts at 50 grand a year. I applied for every scholarship, every grant, every loan. Denied every time because I had no credit, no cosigner, no family money to back me up. The schools told me I was too high risk, they said. Come back when you have financial stability. Judge Caprio listened, his hard expression softening just a little. So I took a job as a paralegal. I figured if I just worked a few years as a paralegal, saved every penny, built some credit, maybe then law school would finally be possible, but paralegals don't earn enough to put away 150 grand for tuition. I was trapped. I could read the law, understand it, apply it perfectly. But I couldn't practice it just because I didn't have that one stupid piece of paper. That doesn't justify practicing without a license, Judge Caprio said. But the sharp edge in his voice had already started to dull. I know, Your Honor. I know, Rebecca's eyes welled up. But then something happened. I was at that small firm, and we had this client, an immigrant mom whose landlord was illegally kicking her out. She couldn't pay our fees. My boss was dropping the case. I knew exactly how to save her. I knew the law, the motions, the arguments, everything. But I couldn't file a single thing, because I wasn't a lawyer. Tears spilled over. She got evicted anyway. She and her 3 little kids ended up in a shelter, and I remember thinking, what's the point of knowing the law if I can't actually use it to help the people who need it most? What good is this whole system if only people with money get justice? So you decided to break the law. Caprio said quietly, I decided to help the people the legal system had completely abandoned. She took a shaky breath. At first I took clients pro bono free. I told every single one up front I wasn't officially licensed, but that I knew what I was doing. Most of them didn't care. They just needed somebody who would actually fight for them. And when did you start charging? Rebecca looked at the floor. After about a year, I had to eat. I had to pay rent. I kept fees crazy low $1,500 for an entire case. Sometimes less, sometimes nothing if they truly couldn't pay. The big firms charged that for 1 hour. I charged it for months of work. Judge Caprio stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the Providence skyline. Ms. Walsh, do you realize what you've done is a serious felony? That I'm required to report this to the state bar? That you could go to prison? Yes, Your Honor. I understand, and yet you kept going for 15 years. Because people needed me, Your Honor. Because the system is broken. Because justice shouldn't only be for people who can afford it. What Judge Caprio said next left Rebecca and everyone who later heard about it speechless. Miss Walsh, I'm going to do something highly unusual. I'm going to investigate your claims myself. I'm going to pull your case files, talk to your clients, look at every outcome you ever got, and then I'll decide what happens next. Your Honor, I don't understand. Honestly? Neither do I. Ms. Walsh, neither do I. But in 40 years on this bench, I've never seen anything like you. You're either a criminal who's been scamming people for a decade and a half, or you're someone who somehow delivered real justice to people the system forgot. And before I ruin your life, I need to know which one is true. Over the next 2 weeks, Judge Caprio did something no one had ever seen a sitting judge do. He personally investigated Rebecca Walsh. He tracked down as many of her clients as he could. He read every file. He called opposing counsel who'd faced her in court. He studied the win-loss record. What he found floored him. 187 clients over 15 years, 164 wins or favorable. Settlements, an 87% success rate that beat most licensed lawyers. 0. Complaints, not one. Dozens of clients sent letters. She saved my family from the street. She got me disability benefits after 3 denials. She only charged $400. She won me $8,000 in stolen wages for $300. I knew she wasn't official, but she knew more immigration law than the fancy lawyer I paid for a consultation. He also learned she had never touched a criminal case, just civil matters where the worst outcome was money, never prison. She'd been careful, ethical in her own way, and ridiculously effective, but she had still broken the law, and Judge Caprio had sworn to uphold it. 2 weeks later, he called a hearing. That would become the most controversial moment of his career. The courtroom was jammed. Reporters, law professors, spectators, shoulder to shoulder. Rebecca sat at the defendant's table, now formally charged with felony unauthorized practice of law, but this wasn't a normal criminal hearing. Judge Caprio had invited the Rhode Island Bar Association, several law school deans, and a dozen of Rebecca's former clients to attend. This court is convened, Caprio announced, not just to deal with the charges against Ms. Rebecca Walsh, but to force us to face the bigger question her case drags into the light. Does our legal system actually deliver justice? Or does it only deliver justice to people who can pay for it? The Bar Association lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, with respect, Ms. Walsh committed a felony. The law is crystal clear. This hearing is completely unnecessary. Sit down, counselor, Caprio said, voice like iron. This hearing is more necessary than any I've held in 40 years. Because this case is making me face something I've ignored my entire career. He turned to the gallery. Mr. Martinez, you were Ms. Walsh's client just last week. When you learned she wasn't licensed, what did you think? Elena Martinez stood, voice shaking but strong. Your Honor, I don't care if she has a certificate hanging on the wall. She saved me when nobody else would. She kept me from losing $3,500 I don't even have. If people like her aren't allowed to help people like me, then who will? Caprio nodded and pointed to another client. Mr. Johnson, 3 years ago, disability benefits case. An elderly man rose slowly, leaning hard on his cane. Your Honor, I went to 4 real lawyers first. Everyone wanted $5,000 just to open the file. I live on Social Security. I don't have $5,000. Miss Walsh took my case for $400 and won me $30,000 in back benefits. She literally saved my life. I don't care about her license. I care that she cared. Judge Caprio looked straight at the Bar Association rep. Counselor, tell me if Ms. Walsh goes to prison tomorrow and never practices again, who exactly is going to represent Mr. Martinez? Mr. Johnson? The hundreds like them? Your Honor, there are legal aid organizations with 6-month waiting lists, strict income cutoffs, that are drowning and broke. Caprio's voice thundered. Tell me who helps these people right now today when legal aid says, sorry, we're full. The room went dead silent. I've seen the numbers myself. In Rhode Island, 70% of low-income people facing legal problems get zero help. Zero. So I'll ask one more time, who exactly is going to help them? Dead silence filled the courtroom. Miss Walsh broke the law. That part is undeniable, but she broke it to fill a hole that our own legal system dug a giant, shameful gap between the people who desperately need justice and the people who can actually pay for it. What Judge Caprio proposed next would either change Rhode Island forever or destroy his 40-year legacy in disgrace. Judge Caprio rose from the bench, every eye locked on him, 40 years of authority ringing in his voice. I've thought about this case day and night, what justice truly demands, what the law actually requires, and I've reached a decision a lot of you are going to hate. He looked straight at Rebecca. Ms. Walsh, you committed a serious felony. You practiced law without a license for 15 years. You misled clients, courts, colleagues, everyone about who you really were. Under normal circumstances, I could send you to prison for up to 5 years and hit you with crushing fines. Rebecca closed her eyes, ready for the hammer to fall, but I'm not going to do that. The courtroom exploded. The Bar Association lawyer leapt up, shouting objections. Reporters hammered their keyboards. Camera flashes popped everywhere. Rules be damned. Order! Caprio slammed the gavel so hard the sound cracked like thunder. I said order. When the room finally froze again, he went on, voice steady but blazing. I'm not sending Ms. Walsh to prison. Because prison wouldn't just punish her, it would punish the 187 desperate people she actually helped. It would scream to the world that our system cares more about diplomas on the wall than real competence, more about protecting the Lawyers Guild than protecting the vulnerable. He drew a breath, tone turning steel hard. That does not mean she walks free. Miss Walsh will pay $50,000 fine, every cent going straight into a legal aid fund for low-income Rhode Islanders. She will complete 500 hours of community service, teaching legal literacy in the neighborhoods that need it most, and she is barred from representing anyone in any legal matter for the next 3 years. Rebecca's shoulders dropped, relief crashing against disappointment. But listen closely, Caprio said, leaning forward, voice dropping so everyone had to strain to hear. Because here's what else is going to happen. I am formally recommending to the Rhode Island Supreme Court that they create an alternative path to becoming a lawyer, one based on proven competency and experience, not just money and classrooms. Other states already do it. Law office, study, apprenticeships, competency exams. Rhode Island is going to join them. The bar reps turned purple. Your Honor, you can't. I can, and I am. Caprio thundered. And on top of that, I am personally working with every law school in this state to create full-ride scholarship funds for students from foster care, from poverty, from backgrounds exactly like Ms. Walsh's, brilliant people who have the heart and the mind to be incredible lawyers but can't come up with $50,000 a year. He locked eyes with Rebecca. Ms. Walsh, you broke the law, but you did it fighting for the same thing I've spent my life fighting for. That every single person deserves real justice. Your methods were wrong. Your motive was right, and I swear on my robe, I will spend whatever years I have left making sure no one else ever has to choose between following the rules and helping people. Then came the twist literally no one saw coming. Rebecca. Walsh stood up, tears pouring down her face, but they weren't tears of relief. They were tears of shame. Gratitude and 15 years of carrying a lie finally breaking loose. Your Honor. May I speak? Caprio nodded gently. Of course. I'm so grateful for your mercy, truly. But I can't accept it if it means I'm not held completely accountable. You could hear a pin drop. Even Caprio looked stunned. I broke the law for 15 years. I told myself it was noble, that I was fixing a broken system. And maybe part of that was true, but I also got paid. I built a reputation. I felt important. I loved being needed, and I did it all while lying to every single person who trusted me. Her voice grew stronger. Fierce. Those clients you quoted, they say they didn't care about the license, but I never gave them the real choice. I never once said, hey, I'm not actually licensed, still want me to represent you. I let them believe I was legitimate. That was selfish. That was cowardly. And it was wrong. She wiped her eyes, standing taller. I'll pay every dollar of that fine. I'll do every hour of service, but I want to add something to my sentence. I want to personally apologize, face-to-face and in public. To every client I ever represented, I want to help build the transparency that should have been there from day one. And Your Honor, if those scholarship doors you're opening actually happen, I want to be the very first person to walk through them the right way this time, not because I deserve special treatment, but because I want to prove that someone who grew up with nothing can still become a real lawyer, licensed, accountable, ethical, the lawyer I only pretended to be. For 3 heartbeats the courtroom was perfectly still. Then one of Rebecca's old clients started clapping. Then another. And another. In seconds the entire gallery, everyone except the stone-faced bar reps, was on their feet. Applause thundering. Judge Caprio let it wash over the room, eyes shining. When it finally quieted, he picked up his gavel, voice thick with emotion. Miss Walsh, in 40 years and thousands of cases, I have heard every excuse known to man. I have never heard someone offered mercy turn around and demand fuller accountability. He brought the gavel down, soft this time, like a judge sealing something sacred. Sentence stands as I stated. Fine. Service, 3-year bar from practice, but I am also appointing you, effective immediately, as official legal literacy consultant to this court. You will work with law schools, legal aid groups, community centers, helping us build the system that should have been there all along. And when you walk into law school one day, Ms. Walsh, you won't be hiding your past. You'll be carrying it proudly, proof that second chances aren't weakness. They're how justice gets stronger. He looked out over the courtroom, eyes fierce and kind at the same time. That's the kind of lawyer I want arguing in front of me. Case closed. The gavel slammed down. Case closed. 3 years later. Spring 2027? The Providence Journal splashed across the front page. From fraud to licensed. Woman once exposed as fake lawyer. Graduates top of her class. Passes Rhode Island bar on first try. The photo showed Rebecca Walsh, now 42. Standing outside Roger Williams University School of Law in her cap and gown. The biggest smile you've ever seen, right beside her? Judge Frank Caprio, retired, eyes twinkling, arm around her shoulders like a proud dad. Today feels like redemption, Rebecca told the reporters swarming them. Not redemption for what I did wrong. Redemption for a dream I had 15 years ago, that I could actually be a good lawyer. Now I finally get to prove it the right way. The article laid it all out. She finished every hour of community service, paid every dollar of the fine, then walked into law school on a full ride. Scholarship from the exact fund Caprio had strong-armed into existence, graduated, top of her class, aced the bar on the first shot, but the real headline was bigger than one woman. Because of Rebecca Walsh, Rhode Island became the 3rd state in America to create an alternative path to the bar. No law school required if you can prove real-world competency under supervision. 6 people had already qualified. 20 more were in the pipeline. Rebecca Walsh broke the law, Judge Caprio told the Journal, grinning wide. But she also broke open a conversation this country desperately needed. Justice shouldn't be a luxury item that costs 3 years and $200,000. Rebecca had already accepted a job at Rhode Island Legal services, same clients, same fights, but now fully licensed, insured, and completely transparent. I'm doing the exact same work I did before, she laughed. Only now my clients know exactly who I am. That's the difference between helping people and deceiving them. When a reporter asked if she regretted those 15 illegal years, she paused, looked straight into the camera, and answered, I regret the lies. I regret every time I let someone believe I was something I wasn't, but I will never regret showing up for those 187 people who had nowhere else to turn. Was I perfect? Hell no. Did I make mistakes? Plenty, but I tried, and sometimes imperfect trying beats a perfect system that doesn't try at all. Back at his home, Judge Caprio hung Rebecca's brand new law license on the wall right next to his own dot. It reminded him of the hardest, best lesson he ever learned. Justice isn't blind obedience to rules. It's constantly asking whether the rules themselves are just the Rebecca Walsh case. Lit a fire across the country. Law schools started throwing scholarships at kids from foster care and housing projects. States rushed to copy. Rhode Island's alternative licensing program, legal aid budgets actually, went up for once, but the moment everyone remembers happened the day Rebecca was sworn in as a real attorney. Judge Caprio sat in the front row, watching her raise her right hand and promise to uphold the law. This time for real. After the ceremony, she walked straight to him, eyes shining with tears. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing something in me worth saving. Caprio just smiled. Rebecca, I didn't save you. You were always this person. I just helped move the boulders out of your way. He chuckled, then added, besides, you know the funniest part? What? Those 15 years you were fake? You won 87% of your cases. Now, with the fancy degree and the official license, your win rate? She grinned. 85%. He threw his head back and laughed, a huge, booming, joyful laugh. See? The paper didn't make you better at helping people. It just made it legal. The woman who once walked into his courtroom as a fraud walked out years later as one of the best lawyers Rhode Island ever produced. Her crime exposed the system's greatest flaw. That justice too often has a price tag. Judge Caprio could have crushed her, made an example, locked her away, and called it a day. Instead, he held her accountable, and then turned around and fixed what forced her to break the law in the first place. This story isn't about celebrating fraud. It's about admitting that sometimes the people who break unjust rules are the ones who love justice the most. Rebecca Walsh spent 15 years as a fake lawyer. She spent the next 3 becoming a real one. And in the process, she dragged an entire legal system kicking and screaming into being a little fairer, a little braver, a little more human. Because in the end, a law degree doesn't make you a lawyer. Integrity does. Competence does. The guts to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves does. Rebecca Walsh always had those things. She just needed the system to finally catch up and let her use them. Now it has, and because one woman refused to accept that justice should be for sale, the system is better for everyone. Case closed. For good this time.